You're listening to Sustainable from AgriBusiness Global, covering the crop protection, biologicals, and plant health markets advancements towards creating a healthier planet. Welcome to Sustainable. My name is Renee Targus. I'm the editor for AgriBusiness Global and your host for today's discussion with Dr. Luke Samuel, Manager of Development Services for AgriThority. Welcome, Luke.
Renee, thank you. Happy to be on. Love talking about, agriculture, and certainly looking forward to the chance to talk to you and share some thoughts.
Great. Let's kind of get into it. So recently, something that came out into my attention that was for kind of the end of 2024 was the Ag PlayBook that was put together by a group of professionals in the industry who wanted common language for development stages for, crop protection and biologicals. The pharmaceutical industry has that, and they were thinking we need to have that because nobody really knows, we don't have common language for those different stages of development. So what's your opinion on this? Is this something that's really needed? Is the work that you're doing, are you seeing that this is a big issue?
Yeah, I believe that we really need a strong process in place as you think about bringing products from concept all the way to the marketplace, and really focused approach on a staging gate, right? So have you developed the right formulation? Have you figured out application methods? Have you figured out rates, crops, all those types of questions that come into it? And so, yeah, to have a strong process and also, like you're saying, be able to have some common definitions across the industry is really, really helpful.
You're talking a lot about those development stages mentioned in the Ag PlayBook. One of the things that they were talking about was it's very confusing to try to figure out what stage of development products are in because the industry doesn't have that common language. So is that something that you're running into as well? And is this something that the industry needs to take seriously, where people all need to start to get on the same page as far as how they're defining these different stages and talking about them?
Yeah, great question. I think there's a lot of complexity within the ag space today. If you look at some of the big players that have been around a long time, they have very well-defined processes, right? They know how to take a product. They know the different steps that needs to happen, the registration, the marketing, right? It's a well-oiled machine for the most part. I think as we get new innovators into the space, they're trying to skip some steps essentially, right? We've seen that in other industries. If you look at software or other types of industries like that, there's been able to kind of make leaps and bounds and not have to follow the traditional paths. When we look at agriculture, one of the key things that we oftentimes overlook or maybe minimize is kind of the grower perspective of what is critical to that grower, what is that grower currently doing, and how do we need to make sure that whatever product we're bringing to the market kind of fits that narrative or that paradigm of what that grower is currently doing. And so having a robust process, again, or talking to folks like AgriThority, say, hey, what are the different types of questions I should be asking? What are the types of factors I should be considering? It helps you manage that process more effectively, but also make sure that you don't miss some critical pieces where that product may or may not be successful based on either your use rates or whatever else may come into fruition because you didn't do some homework ahead of time. So yes, I'm all for, as we start engaging with companies and clients, we very much say, here's where we think you are. Here's the strategy and the planning that is necessary that we feel like to get you to a spot where you can take this successfully into the commercial market, right? So the unfortunate part is, and a lot of people don't like to hear this, there's really no shortcuts, but you can gain some efficiencies, and you can also speed some things up if you have all of those processes in play from the start, right? And really that starts with strategy and a strong process in place.
Which, kind of brings me to my next question is you see a lot of the biological companies stalling and they're going bankrupt. They're trying to bring new products to market. They can't get through the cost of regulations and then, getting into a market. So what are 3 mistakes you see happening for these innovative biological companies wanting to bring these products to market? And what are 3 actions that companies should take instead of making these mistakes?
The ag industry is so dynamic, right? So we're seeing a lot of pressure from consumers, right? The end users who are wanting more sustainable raised products. Regenerative ag is a big part of what we're doing. We're also looking at how do you minimize some of those traditional crop inputs that may be less environmentally friendly than some new options. I think as we look at it, though, the key foundation has to be that disciplined development approach, right? And so I think a lot of companies try to skip steps, or maybe they try and go too early to have farmers test their product, get it on farm, try and find some farmers that will purchase their product. In our experience, in my experience, that's can work, but it's long odds, right? Because oftentimes the bar of what the farmer understands and knows and is used to is not that, right? They're used to having a lot of data coming at them. They're used to having a lot of confidence from the folks that they're talking to say, hey, you need to try this, or we think this is going to be a good fit on your farm. And so skipping that step can be detrimental, right? And those are that's time that's effectively wasted then from a development standpoint that you could have been doing something else. The other piece, I would say, one of the other components is really resource allocation, right? Where do you spend your time? Where do you spend your resources to ensure that you're on the right path with that product to reach your end goal, right? And then, the last piece would be it takes time. It takes resources, right? There's no way to kind of go from A to Z without touching all the other pieces in between. So making sure that, again, have that foundational planning session of what is the solution I'm trying to provide? How do I think about where it's going to fit? Do I know the market? Do I know the competitors? Do I know what, let's say margin or other type of information that, retailer distribution partners may want to know? Have I thought through all those scenarios so that I can really start to crystallize and pull together my performance story along with my business opportunity as I go into the marketplace?
Are you seeing a lot of biological companies come into the market where they haven't established those relationships? What would be your advice to those, to how to establish those relationships?
Couple of things. I think one is start networking. There's a lot of unique products, and the biological world is so interesting, and there's a ton of excitement, right? So the interesting thing for me is, how do you start to network with the right folks, and who are the right folks at the different either distribution partners, retail partners? It could be basic manufacturer partners, but ask them how they see your product best fitting, right? So you may feel like you have a farm ready product, but in reality, it could be better off as an ingredient. And are you willing to kind of reset your expectations and level set kind of where you are in that development process to maybe take advantage of some other opportunities? I think overall, there's a lot of unique folks coming into this industry that are not typically, maybe not have been born and raised, quote unquote, in the ag industry. And so I'm all about being disruptive, but I think sometimes understanding how a lot of those processes work and just some of the ways that some of these traditional companies look at products, think about products, and develop products can be extremely helpful in navigating that, because all technologies are valuable, right? It's just about finding the right fit, finding the right spot, and spending the time to make sure that you have that dialed in as best as possible is really, really important. And a lot of times people don't have the patience to do that. So my advice is really to just listen and spend a lot of time asking questions, and not be so resolute in you're thinking that your path is the only path, because there could be some really cool opportunities that are very adjacent to where you are, but it may not be something that you've considered yet, just because you're not able to kind of take your eyes off the ball that you feel like is the most important.
You're talking about networking and getting into markets. The biggest biologicals markets seem to be the US, EU, and Brazil. What are some areas for biologicals, like opportunities, do you see in, like, say, like the US, the EU, and Brazil?
There's a lot of differences across the globe. And if you look at biological adoption in South America, Brazil specifically, it's been very, very high and very, very rapid. And some really interesting solutions that are providing great opportunities in Brazil, both for growers and I think for companies. And we continue to see that landscape evolve faster and faster and faster. And I think there's opportunities in Brazil for even next generation biological products, right? Because the adoption is there, the trust is there, and the growers have confidence that these are excellent solutions for my fields and my farms. Switching gears to the EU, it's really a tale of, kind of what is the regulatory environment going to need to do? And so again, tons of innovation and a lot of opportunity, but just a different landscape relative to some of the other world areas. And in the US, it's really focused on, hey, we're kind of traditionally done this with, the way that my dad did or my grandfather did, right? Quote unquote, of, I need this fertilizer, I need these crop inputs, and this is the crop I'm going to raise. So it's really hard sometimes to inch your way into some of those row crops like corn and soybeans. There's a lot of interest there, But again, the fallback is always kind of more of that traditional crop system that we've known. When you start to introduce new technologies, especially in the US, I think there's really good opportunity for, building that data set against those right competitors, and to help really underscore the value that you can bring and the performance that's going to be equally important to those growers. And, performance across, whether it's in Europe, Asia, South America, the US, performance really matters, right? It's that return on investment for the grower. So if you think about what you need to charge or what your product value is, that grower needs to get about 3x that dollar amount, just simply because whatever they pay, right, they want to see that 3x return on investment for what they're spending. And again, a lot of it's mindset, right? And so at AgriThority, we see a lot of interest from South American or European or Asian companies to come into the US, and vice versa, of US companies looking to go global or ex-US to try and take advantage of some of those differences in the marketplace.
Just a quick follow-up question to what you said when you're talking about Asia. What areas are you talking about, the countries?
Good question. And really, if you think about like China, a huge opportunity in China. Again, there's a lot of geopolitical challenges that enter into that conversation. I think there is a lot of value, especially if you look at opportunity with smallholder farmers. I mean, they are the backbone of much of that agricultural system in many of those countries. And we need options for them that are going to be more environmentally friendly, a safer alternative potentially, and something that's going to help them manage food and manage food supply, right? Because ultimately it's basically farm to mouth. So, we think there's opportunities all over the place. The biggest thing that we continually hear is, people have this idea that they want to go after, say, the corn market in the US, right? It's give or take 80 million acres every year. And if I could only get X% of that, I would be doing great. Well, the reality is it's highly, highly competitive. And so some of these other types of markets may be competitive, but not quite as competitive or have the amount of players in them. So there's some really good options out there. And if you look at Australia or Europe, Asia, I mean, there's a lot of really interesting, unique technologies coming into the marketplace. It's how do you incentivize those types of companies to make sure that they're maintaining that, to produce those products that are going to fit some of those different niche markets that are out there in the world.
All right. Is there anything else you wanted to add that you think is important to this subject?
A couple of things come to mind. One is I'm going to reiterate process and that stage and gate. I think as you look at kind of having that standardized nomenclature for where you are in that development process, having some well-defined stages of where that product might be in its evolution towards market is really, really important. So I'm all for making sure that we're aligned on that. I think the other component is just to maintain discipline. And so you have to be flexible enough and agile enough to kind of look around and say, maybe this isn't the right path. But you also have to be, foundationally set to say, okay, this is where I want to go, right? My path may deviate a little bit, but at the end of the day, I know I have something really, really important here. And I think I have something really, really valuable here. Based on our experience with over 300 biological products over the last 16 years, that strong, disciplined approach is really, really critical to success. Not all of them are going to make it, right? But there's enough technology out there and there's enough grit within the industry. And I think enough pull from consumers and other folks to really help make sure that this is going to become a vibrant part of our cropping systems and also part of our ag economy moving forward. It has to be, right? I mean, just looking at the landscape today, there's some really great solutions out there that I think we can start to integrate into our ag systems at very low cost with high success.
Well, that's good news. Thank you, Luke. I appreciate your time and I enjoyed the interview, and we hope to have you back sometime soon.
My pleasure. Renee, thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to Sustainable from AgriBusiness Global. You can find more podcasts, videos, news, e-newsletters, event, and webinar information at agribusinessglobal.com.